Great, thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Alok Devkoda, and what I'm showing you today is a machine learning algorithm that's used to manage portfolio. And the reason why I came about this is like, with all the things that's going on right now, um, one of the issues that we're seeing is like a lot of people that do need help with the investment advice are not able to get it because either they have not enough money or not enough knowledge. So I'm trying to build something that's sort of customizable to each person, and then it sort of gives you an idea of like how you should go about investing. A lot of math, there's a lot of math, obviously there is, and there are a lot of models that have been used. So the problem that I see is like the investment advice is expensive and it's out of reach for majority of the people, especially people that actually do need it. And then even the advice that you get is based on sort of outdated models. I mean, those models have been around since 1960s. And they worked for a long time, but things have changed drastically, and it's sort of flawed, and you're not getting the same result. And if you want to be technical, what's happening is that they're using linear models to predict nonlinear outcomes, and that's always a big problem. And the other thing is like clients are being charged to track index, and all the advice is based on assumption that the market always goes up. Which is true. Like if you look at it from 1920 to now, like 100-year chart, I mean, it looks really good. It goes up, but we may need the money sooner than 100 years. So we need to find something to do there. This is one slide where it shows like, back in the day, they used to have this defined benefit plan where you put the money, and then, it's more like a pension. You get the money once you retire. These days, the defined benefit plans have gone down, and it's like more like contribution. You contribute it. It's your own personal account, and then you figure out, how to get the money later on. And then there's 83% of the people want advice, and the advice is expensive. And robo advisors have come, which have made it a lot cheaper, but still it's not as good, especially when things are really volatile. The solution that I came up with is like we're trying to use technology to level the playing field, because if you want to customize it for majority, like in large scale, you have to use technology. And with all the analytics and algorithms these days, it's possible to define risk and create customized portfolios. So basically, I do have a product, I do have a website that I can share later on, but this is just one example. This is like one of the machine learning algorithm that's trying to predict, it looks at last 20 years of data and says, okay, based on what we see right now and what has happened in the past, what are the chances of it going up or down? And where this becomes really important is that based on what this, there are a couple of different models, and based on what they say, what the outcome we get from the model, we basically sort of come up with this sheet, like where it's like, okay, this is the up prediction, this is the down prediction, and then we see, okay, it's up, down, up. So what this is basically doing is that we're looking at this final forecast. It's like whether the future returns are going to be normal, weak, or strong. And then we tilt the portfolio based on what we get. So just to show you, this is the actual product that I've built. And then based on 3 different market conditions, like let's say the very top one is like we expect the market to be weak. And the middle one is we expect the market to be normal. And the bottom one is like we expect the market to be strong. And then in this case, I have like current portfolio value as $100,000, annual contribution as $5,000. And we have basically 15 years, till we need the money. Then based on this, it kind of gives you different combination based on whether you expect weak, normal, or strong. and then you can put your portfolio. You can manage. You can buy tilt your portfolio based on that, like how much stocks and how much bonds. And then it kind of looks at, there's a furthermore in the calculator, it kind of looks at, okay, what's the maximum drawdown you could see, how likely the portfolio is going to be, based on whether you choose aggressive or conservative. And and then it kind of gives you what's the success, like, if you have some goal in mind of like, I want to have X amount of dollar, what's the chances of success? And it's looking, these are all math, like it's looking at previous data to figure it out. The business model right now, the way I'm thinking about it is like, you can do it as a subscription service to masses, or, a lot of people may have like where they say, okay, you know what, why don't you manage it for, us? And then the third thing is like, we can collaborate with other investment advisors and then license this to them. The market opportunity is huge. I mean, we're, everybody's targeting the top, that $17 trillion one. There's very few that's targeting the bottom 17 trillion, like let's say, and then there's 116 million people in the US that have net worth less than $2 million. And then that's the primary target that I have. And then competition, we have traditional asset managers, robo-advisors. They have their pluses and minuses, but it's a really competitive industry because, money is pretty good. But these are the main competitions. And in summary, just want to say that a lot of people are looking for help, and cost of advice makes advice away from their reach. And the industry is actually focused on gathering assets, and performance and technology will help. Algorithm helps level the playing field. I think I'm at 6-minute mark.
You're actually at about 7 minutes. Everybody go ahead, give Alok a hand. Remember, you can go ahead and raise your hands up even if you are muted. As a reminder for everybody, he had 3 asks. One is finding people who are skilled to help him develop this. Second is directions that he could possibly go for investment. And the third and most important one, does this actually make sense to you, or are you completely lost? With that, Matt, are we good with going ahead and cutting out to our rooms?
Yep, give me 1 second here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will have, we'll have about 10 minutes for group discussion, and then it'll automatically bring you back in about 10 minutes. Okay?
Thank you,
All
Matt.
right.
And everybody, enjoy your conversations.
How do I know what group I should be?
It'll send you an invite right now.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Hello, everyone.
For those of you that get stuck in the main area, I will stay here as well if we want to. Hassan, Martin, Hassan, Diana. Can you guys hear me? Just Hassan.
Matt. Matt.
Can you hear me?
Yo.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Now-
you guys. It looked like you only had 2 people in your room.
Yeah.
Well, we can do one here. That's why I stay in the main room, just in case there's a problem.
Oh, nice. Someone's on mute over there, though.
Yeah, it's.
Did all the other groups work?
Yeah, everybody else. I'm not sure why you guys only got 2 people. Some people may have quit.
Okay.
So sometimes that happens. But anyway, what do you guys think?
So his asks, oh yeah, the resources, investments, and does this
Doesn't
make
make
sense?
Yeah.
I do find it a little ironic that he's trying to make his company is based on helping investors make good decisions, and he's looking for investments himself. Interesting.
Okay. That's fair.
I guess it also makes sense to me. I understood it all. It's just basically an AI based trading algorithm for stocks. Seems like he was going after the Dow and SPY. That's what I saw in the 2 columns. So
Sure.
I think there are already AI algorithms out there. I mean, I'd like to know what he's doing so special. And it's also slightly concerning to me that he's looking for skill set to help build this thing. I don't know how much he already has built, but the magic is in the technology.
Yeah,
And
but you gotta, he wasn't real specific on what skill. So the skill might be the app, which isn't the magic, right? The magic's the algorithm.
right. No, you're right. So yeah,
Like you could be totally right, but maybe there's like a little more information that we need to get on that side of things.
yeah, we need more info on that. Yeah. But for finding skills, I mean, if you need an app built out, maybe the UCI has a lot of programs. I know you're real good with getting into those programs. So UCI has some programs for getting some
Hadar's
skills.
actually on the line right now too.
Who?
The guy who runs the program.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
What
is on.
program is this?
UCI has a program through the Donald Bren Computer Science
Information
School.
technology. Yeah.
That basically they give companies student programmers to do student projects. So I'm actually working with a student group right now to develop an app, and it's basically completely student run app development. Anyway, what did you think of the presentation, Diana?
I thought it was interesting. I think it's something that's already out there. He said there's AI algorithms available. I think the need or the niche, I think it's a matter of finding the niche. So I recall that he mentioned something about retirement funds. So I can honestly say, being a participant in a government retirement fund, you're asked to do your own allocations. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, where do I put it? Or you can have the state do it for you. So I think finding a niche where you're supposed to be already doing it and having an informed way of doing so would be helpful. I think that need could be filled right there. There could be a market for it. And, obviously just proving that his algorithm has been beneficial, or the returns have been good in what his algorithm is recommending would be the sell. But I think just finding the niche would be the important thing to do. There is a need. And if I knew that his algorithm included all of the the bonds and funds and everything else that I can choose from, I would look at it seriously.
This to me was I think it's interesting. This to me was more of an indication of like consumer behavior changing. He brought up this, hey, if you invested in the stock market over 100 years, you're going to make money. This indicates to me basically you're placing your bets on the fact that there's going to be a consumer behavior change to more day trading than buy and hold. And I think it's interesting that you brought up like track record. My gut tells me is if he had his algorithm plugged in 2016 to January of 2020, it probably looked like the thing actually worked and did pretty well. But if you went to April, my gut would tell me that it looks like trash, because predicting that fall off, I don't think AI can do. So it's just interesting to me to think about, well, if someone's a buy and hold type investor, this has no applicability to them, versus a day trader. All right, that's interesting. Maybe there is something there, but that is a real shift in consumer behavior around really approaching the market and frankly how, I don't know how most people invest, but a large majority of people put money into their 401k, walk away and never look at it again. I don't know. I think it's an interesting bet on how people plan on trading. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know if is he really going after people who are trading? I mean, it seems like it's kind of like the AI algorithm goes off and trades for you. Like you pay him a subscription every month, and you put in some cash, and the AI, the algorithm, whatever, decides when it trades and when it doesn't, and just trades for you in the background. That's the kind of impression I got.
I guess his market was households versus ETF fund managers. If he said, I'm going to sell an algorithm to ETFs to plug into their software and it's going to handle it better, okay. But his market was households. So
right,
maybe that's a mismatch.
I mean, household, right? So it seemed like it was like a separate fund type thing. Like you pay him monthly and you put in some cash, and then the algorithm trades for you over the course of time, as opposed to just holding it with like the 401k or whatever, is kind of the impression I got.
It's a mutual fund. It's a mutual fund. I mean, that's what happens with mutual funds. You give them the money, and they're the ones that determine how they're going to invest the money based upon their calculations and recommendations.
And there's already ones that handle electronic trading, right? I think.
Mutual funds?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do that already with Barron's. I give them the money, and they are the ones that are doing all of the calculations and whatever it is.
So then maybe the question is, how does he compare against those mutual funds?
So that's why I said the niche, finding the niche, and like to target people that have to make their own decisions on, how are you going to allocate your funds, would be his market. So
but isn't it going more like, Diana, do you like, when I don't have a 401k anymore. I sold it and put it into a company. Maybe the wrong decision, but so I don't have any money in the stock market. But when I did, it was through my company 401k, and I was basically given the options, right? Hey, these are the options. This is who we use. I think most people invest that way. Now I know you could do IRAs, stuff like that, and I don't know what percentage of people have that, but.
Right. So you can, but within each segment, you have to choose which item that you want to invest in. So you can have like a growth fund, and there's 5 different growth funds. You can have a large cap, and there's 5 different large caps. So that's where the algorithm comes in. What percentage do you want in bonds? What percentage do you want in funds? So that's where I'm like, oh goodness, how do I make these decisions? And I just make them blindly. Or you can say, okay, say you do it for me. So that's where I say that his product would fit nicely.
Sure.
And there's
I'm gonna bring everybody back right now. Anyway, it was a nice conversation. I've got many more questions, but I got to bring everybody back, so I apologize.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right, rooms are closing in a minute, so people will start rushing back in.
Can you send me via chat the contact for that app program that you spoke about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Great. Thank you so much.
I gotta find it.
Hey, Shirley.
Got it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Kind of, whoa, somebody's got a really bad feedback problem. For everyone, I'm actually putting in a message in the chat, but specifically for the people in my group, we ended up talking a little bit about the problem that Alok is trying to solve for, and the essence, from what I understand, and Alok, if I am wrong, please fix me. But my understanding is that the models that most investment firms use are honestly super out of date. So we ended up talking a little bit about a organization called Renaissance Technologies, which is an investment fund that has no finance people. They're all computer and data analysts. So the one that I just put in the main chat is actually the TED Talk from Jim Simons with Renaissance Technologies, and it's from a long time ago, but it's actually a really interesting way to understand the problem. Alok, to just finish up quickly on that comment that I was making, based on what we heard in our group, and we'll see what we hear from everybody else, really narrowing in on why your solution is superior to other solutions might be a very key element. So as people are coming back in, please go ahead, and this is our time for general Q&A. If you've got a question, throw your hand in the air like you just don't care, except, you know, on virtual. So Cynthia, I'm going to take you first. If you have another, if as another person, you have a question, please go ahead, throw your hand up, and we'll get to you after Cynthia. Cynthia, you have the floor.
Well, the main thing I'd say, having listened to him in the other room, is that he needs to work on short answers. You have a tendency to go very long and to diverge from what the question is. And especially if you're going to be talking to investors, you're going to lose them the first time you answer a question. And when somebody asks you a question in an investor group, it should be very short and to the point, and you should really prepare them ahead of time. There are certain questions you're always going to get. Why you're different, because you are not differentiating yourself well enough in your presentation. And so that's going to be a question. The model is going to be a question. Your answers were very vague and very long, and you're going to lose the investors. So you need to work on that.
Got it. Thank you.
And that's true for all of our potential entrepreneurs out there. Really think, and that's one of the cool things about 1 Million Cups. I'm sorry, Cynthia, thank you so much. You gave me a great platform to plug 1 Million Cups presentations. There are very few areas where you're allowed to practice Q&A. And if you want investors, yeah, nailing that Q&A is key, because that's actually a really great window for investors into who you are and how you behave. So Kevin, you are up next. If somebody else has a question, go ahead, throw your hand up and we will get to you. Kevin, you have, oh, actually, Matt, we'll get to you after Kevin. And Kevin, you have the floor.
Cool. So I just wanted to address your first ask, which is looking for skills. I'd like to ask firstly, what you already have built out. You alluded to having like a MVP a little bit, but I'd like to know specifically what you already have built out and what kind of skills you're looking for. What do you want to have further built out?
I just sent you the website that I've already built out. And one of the things that right now the website does have just the models, and then but if we're going to customize it to like each individual, we're going to need a little bit more in terms of like JavaScript skills is the main one, you know, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, those are the main one. For actually models, I've got a couple of people that one of the guy actually works at NASA. He doesn't know anything about finance. So I've got 3 other people that are all computer scientists with PhDs. They're helping me with the model, but then trying to more the JavaScript to make the website like the UI design, you know, make it much pretty user-friendly. Those are things that I'm looking at.
So you just need website development help?
Mostly, yeah. And then because, you know, at some point, if we're going to customize it and scale it, we need to have database on the back end. And then, you know, there are going to be some personal information, so security. So those are things that kind of come up with it. I don't need any help with the model itself because I do already have 3 people that we're working as part of the team.
Okay.
And I believe we have Matt up next for a question. If somebody else is interested, go ahead and throw your hand up. Matt, you have the floor.
Cool. Nice job, Alok. I enjoyed hearing about the company. I had a question just on who you're targeting as your customer. That, from the story side of things, that was a little bit unclear for me. You presented the market as households as far as kind of the market cap. So I was unclear if it was something for the consumer or if your target market was like ETFs and it was going to be something that plugged into their algorithm to make that better, or if you were actually trying to be your own fund and get people to put money in and kind of trade for them. Can you explain maybe like how you're actually targeting the customer and who you're actually going after?
Yeah, so right now initially when I built this was for like individuals, just to sort of help them navigate the investment area and then sort of provide them some help on like, you know, what their risk is, what their returns are, and where they should be, and how can they, you know, achieve their goal. So that was the goal. And then as I started doing it, then it's like, you know, I had to talk to a lot of people, and then either they don't have enough money or they're not interested or they're starting out. So recently I started actually talking to other investment firms and, you know, like the registered investment advisors, and say, hey, here's the model, here's what I have, here's how it works. Would you be interested to sort of use it to, you know, look at your client's portfolio? And then one of the benefit of doing that is like, if I get one RIA, they might have 100, 200, 500 clients. And then, you know, I don't have to go to 500 different people. That's the one. And then the other thing is like, you know, we give all this probability and all that thing, but then not all the probabilities were going to be accurate. You know, it's just probability of something happening. And then, you know, or people might say, you know, I don't have the time to do this on my own. And, you know, can you do it? And actually, I am a registered investment advisor and I have my own firm. So if that happens, I can certainly do it for them too, you know. So But right now I'm focused on providing this thing to other investment advisors, and so that they can make decisions for their clients. And actually, before I did the presentation, I was just 2 days ago, I found this another company that was trying to use machine learning algorithm to, and they license it to other advisors. And I just found out they charge like $18,000 per license, which I thought was a lot of money. And I was like, okay, so there is a market for that. I mean, it's just like trying to figure out what's the right step to take it. So that's something that I'm still, the opportunities are there, but I haven't decided on exactly which path I want to go.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, Matt.
No, all right,
ahead.
never mind.
Well, no, go ahead. If it's a quick one, go ahead and take it. But I was going to point out, Alok, based on Cynthia's earlier comment about kind of taking a while with your answers, that was another one where the answer was this long and it needed to be that long.
Got it.
So Matt, your follow-up?
I think my comment pings on some other stuff that Cynthia said, and just how to maybe present what you're doing, and the algorithm really being the powerful point of what you're selling here. If you thought about the algorithm as your product, like that would help sell the story. So sell the algorithm, that's the product. You need to prove the product. So you need to have the data saying this thing actually works, but the algorithm is your product, which is a great position.
Agreed. David, you are up next. Richard, you will be after David. So David, you have the floor.
All right. Well, yeah, so I think, one thing is to first sort of talk about the problem that you're solving. And I guess I'm hearing two sorts of problems. One is that you have an algorithm that's better than other algorithms. And if that's the problem that you're solving, then you should, go into that explanation more. The other thing that you mentioned was like being a subscription fee versus all the other things, who are basically charging a percentage. And that's a problem that I relate to because I worked with investment advisors in the past. I fired them and I do it myself because they're getting money and I'm not seeing any kind of performance. So it's another problem. And if that's the problem you're solving, then go into that in a little bit more detail. But then I heard, well, maybe when you were talking about a subscription, you were talking about, selling it to other advisors. So then I just wasn't clear on, well, what business model, but maybe you're still investigating that. And then, I think somebody else mentioned it, but, defining your target market, more closely. So, is it people that are far from retirement or is it people that are close to retirement? Is it people that are online and using smartphones or online and using desktops? Even that just, segregates your market a lot. But sort of narrowing in on that would help. And then, I don't know, but I'm interested in this and how it turns out. So, good luck with it.
Thank you.
And Richard, we have you up on deck.
Thank you. Alok, it was great listening to your presentation today, and I have a couple thoughts. But before I do that, can you tell me what your background is?
I've got undergrad and master's, both in undergrad in finance and master's in finance and MIS. And I have worked a lot with data analytics and building models. I did work for a hedge fund in the past, and then I've been managing money for the last 5 years and 2 years as owner of my own firm.
Okay, excellent. And are you managing money for people that are in your current, so you're talking about people in that less than $2 million portfolio value target market, that $17 trillion market. Are you managing money for those people right now or someone else?
Yeah, for those people, yeah. I've got so basically it's that market. Yeah, I'm I'm managing. I'm slowly growing, but yeah, I'm managing as a registered investment advisor.
Okay. For yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. When I was thinking about your pitch, I thought in terms of, so one of the things you'll hear people say is your pitch needs to be to your grandmother. And what that means is you're speaking to an audience of varying degrees of understanding about financial technology and algorithms and all that. And most of the time, an investor really doesn't care how your algorithm works. That's not their thing. Their thing is, how am I going to get 3 to 5 times my investment back from you in 5 to 7 years or something like that. And so my opinion is this: your algorithm is not your product. That's not your product. Nobody cares about an algorithm. I wouldn't want one. I don't care what it does. I don't understand it. Frankly, I hate Experian because they have an algorithm even they can't explain to me. When my credit rating goes up and down a couple of points and I call them and say, why? They go, well, you have to talk to an investment advisor. So my thought for you is, it's what you provide to your market that is your product. So think in terms of maybe the ability to invest in small amounts of money, the ability to start to save and then help investing small lots, maybe $100 in a stock or $500 in a stock, and the ability to plan for a future or something like that. Those are emotional things. Algorithms are cold and sterile. No one's going to warm up to it and cuddle with it. But if you tell me I can take my kids, college fund and start putting $100 a month away, and your program can help me grow that with, of course, no guarantees, then that's something people might be interested in listening to. So right now, your presentation, although the tech part is where you're comfortable, probably the algorithms and all that stuff, you're selling the wrong thing. You want an investor to believe that you're going to be able to speak to 1.1 or $17 trillion worth of people, or whatever it is, people, and get them to like you and like your idea of how you can help them. You also need to potentially think about sharing examples of what you can do for people. So literally, even though your audience may be sophisticated, there'll be people in the audience who have no intention of using your application. They've got their own individual investment advisors, but they know people, or they will believe that that's a huge market. How do I believe you can actually touch that market? You didn't share that you're actually managing people money like that. You didn't share any stories about how conversations you've had with those people to convince them you can help them, and examples of how you've helped them. So my recommendation is you personalize your presentation more and get to short answers as much as you can, whenever you can. And there's also, there's a whole lot of things that you didn't touch on with the regulatory stuff and those kinds of things that are, for real investors, they're going to want to know all about that stuff, just even that you've thought about it. So I would go to, there's a site called SlideBean. It will tell you what 13 slides you actually need, and also make some more decisions. Like pick as an example, a funding model. How are you going to make money? Pick one of the 3. And this is how we're going to do it. As opposed to giving 3 options, say, my team and I have talked about it, and we're going to do a subscription model, or we're going to do licensing to other people. And there's a lot more competition out there than you listed. There's all kinds of other apps out there that essentially do this. Fidelity has their own algorithms that look at your portfolio. You need to do a little more research there too. I think you can do it. You're just going to have to go a little farther. You're not ready to invest yet.
Okay, everybody, please join me in giving a really big round of applause.
Thank you.
Great. The virtual environment is very challenging for all of us. And now, unfortunately, I have a big apologies to Cynthia. She put together a presentation for us on ways to find government funding for your startup if your startup might be useful for COVID-19. This, however, means that we will run probably about 15 minutes late. Please go ahead and raise your hand if you have to leave at 9 o'clock so that we can get an idea on whether or not we can. So Adrian, I got you. Great background, by the way. It looks like most people will probably be able to stay. Oh, Allie has to leave. Jade has to leave. Kathleen has to leave. We do have some people that have to leave. It looks like about 7. So Cynthia, because I blew it, I leave it up to you. Would you like to put that information out there this week or wait until next week? I think that it is really important for people to have.
I'll do it now because some of these are expiring as far as time. So it's a time sensitive issue.
Thank you. So with that, please everybody give Cynthia a big round of applause for sharing the information on finding funding for your startup.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, can you enable my share?
Hold on one sec.
Thanks.
Should be good to go.
Okay. Okay, let's see. So hopefully you guys can see my screen now.
Yes.
All right.
You've got a busy calendar.
Yes, I do. All right. So right now there's a lot of money being thrown at everything related to COVID. And one of the groups that has been kind of driving financing is the Air Force. This is their site. One of the things I'll do, well, when I get back to the regular screen, is I'll put a link where you can find a sheet that I put up in my box so that you can download the links so you don't have to try to track all the links. This is their response site for COVID. And if you go up here to this yellow spot, this is where you'll go to the information on their response team. So what they've done is they've put together a group of military people that are assisting in sorting through everybody's ideas. So it's not just big corporations they're looking for, they'll take anything all the way down to individuals. And they have funding that comes out in what's called SBIRs. If you're not familiar with those, it stands for Small Business Innovation Research Grant. Now, phase 1s are usually up to $50,000, and they're usually around 6 to 9 months. Phase 2s go up to $1 million, and they're doing something right now called a direct to phase 2, which means if you've got enough of your stuff put together, they'll push you straight into the phase 2 funding. And in order to do that, you have to have a military client, in this case, an Air Force client. And what they're doing is they've got a form you can fill out, send it in. If they think that they have an Air Force client that they can match you with, they're doing matchmaking right now. So they're helping you find that client, which is like huge. So this is what the topics look like. There's a section for this. And right now there's DARPA, Navy just put one up, that's brand new. And then this is the Air Force group of topics. The topic that I'm talking about right now is the direct to phase 2. And it's this X20.R, which is actually what's considered an out of cycle funding. The military normally does 3 to 4 fundings a year. And so it's normally like X20.1, .2, .3, .4. In this case, they've got a .R, which means they took something out of whack and they've pushed it into its own cycling thing. So the openings are very short. From the time that they announce until the time that they close the solicitations, it's usually 1 month. And so this solicitation closes at the end of this month on the 30th. They're doing a lot of Zoom meetings where they're giving you updates constantly because this thing is changing literally daily. And so they do a meeting every Tuesday and Thursday. And then on this particular one, they're doing an extra Friday meeting as well. So this is the actual solicitation where you can find all the information. And I have links to all this stuff. So the first thing is the actual solicitation. So it's got all the rules and regulations and what you're supposed to be turning in. And then the things underneath it here are all the attachments that you have to do. If you haven't done an SBIR before, you're probably not going to make it for this one. However, the next one, which is the 20.2 that's coming out, actually closes at the end of, I think it's the end of June or July. So you have more time to get organized for that one. The other thing that they've got going on is this CSO COVID response, which is different. It doesn't close until the end of July, I believe, but it's a rolling funding. So what they're doing is you can submit information. On both of these, they have a list of things that they're interested in related to COVID. And you can go through the list, see if anything applies. In the other one, you can fill out the form. That form is also being handed off to these people. They're going to be putting up their own form in about a week or so, but at least they're getting some preliminary information that you're sending in through the other one. So we submitted, for Seasonally Fresh, we submitted one related to sourcing of food because all of our food has gotten disrupted. And we also submitted a secondary one under a separate title that is specifically for dropping our database and doing it for COVID supplies. So we have that one as well. That's weird. That just popped up in my way. Okay. And then this is another group that I talked about a little bit last week. This is off those topics. I'll give you the links to those and you can kind of poke through. I highly recommend that you sit in on some of their Zoom meetings, which take place at 10 o'clock our time. And on the links to the main pages on that, it'll give you recordings of their prior ones. Take a look at those before you try to jump in, because they move so fast and there's a ton of acronyms and they're all military. So they're not what you think they are. So take a look at those first. This is another group that I joined. It's the COVID Healthcare Coalition. We've got over 500 companies, then universities and groups that have joined this. And they're doing a lot of data modeling, research kind of consolidation so that the researchers that are working on this stuff have information that they can use. They've got an amazing resource library, which I'm going to pull up here in a second. Each of these things is a different visualization or research model or practices. And so it's an amazing resource they've been putting together. This is one of the things that they've been working on, which is the plasma treatment. They've now got, I think it's like 75 different hospitals across the country that are now testing this, which is basically giving plasma from somebody that's already been exposed and has the antibodies to the patients that are in critical care. So this is one of the things that came out of that coalition. This is another thing that came out of it, which was a hospital resource calculator. The CDC used to have a thing called a surge predictor for the hospitals where they could put in some data and have some idea of what they were going to hit as far as capacity within their hospitals. This has taken the place of it, so they can put in, how many patients they have coming in within the last 3 days, and it'll project what they're going to be facing within the next few weeks. And it's rather scary, but at least it gives them an idea of what's coming at them. As far as other resources that are out there, there's also a whole bunch of stuff that's up for food tech. If you're in the food industry, I really highly recommend that you subscribe to Food Tech Connect. They've put together a lot of resources, again, just for food people. This is support services for the food and agriculture industry that they put together, and you can add to this, which is awesome. And then this is another guide that they help put out, which is different guides on best practices within the restaurants and things like that, that people should be following. MathWorks is not related to the coalition, but they should be. I'm going to try to get them into it. And they've put together a whole bunch of simulations as well that are mathematical simulations, and some amazing stuff coming out of their group as well. So this is the share link. I'll paste it into chat in just a second. And what I've done is I put the links onto a page in my box. So if you go to this share link, it'll give you all the resources. So let me go back to normal. Okay. And let me put that in so you guys can have it. So any questions? I know I went through that really fast. We don't have a lot of time, but I'll stay for any questions that you guys want to ask me.
And you know, that's one of those things where there were some of us who hung out until almost 10 o'clock last week, just going ahead and chatting. So before we do that, please everybody give Cynthia a round of applause. That was a really wonderful list of resources that I'm sure a lot of us can use. Chris, I've got you up for the first question. If you've got a question, raise your hand. Chris, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia. So earlier you mentioned for the deadline, the end of this month, for one of the first couple. I forget what it was called, but
it's an SBIR. It's a X20.R for the Air Force.
Cool.
The people that have been involved in the calls so far, we've been on them since like the beginning of the month or the end of last month. So it's coming up very quickly. If you're not familiar with SBIRs, they require a lot. You have to do a 15-page technical manual. Now you have to do a slide deck. You have to do a 100-second video, and there's another requirement. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff that you have to put together. So to get all that done by the 30th would be Herculean at this point if you haven't started before. But because they have ongoing funding, the next one is going to close just over a month. And what they're doing is they're doing rapid funding, which they haven't done in the past. Normally, the money can take 9 months or longer to get. And when this one closes at the end of the month, their goal is to let you know that you have funding in less than 30 days and to get you the funding itself within another 30 days. So that would be less than 2 months to get up to $1 million in funding. So, you know, they're really trying to facilitate stuff right now.
And just to go ahead and tag onto that a little bit, yeah, it's really kind of tough because Cynthia, when you first mentioned this after the meeting last week, there was that part of me that was like, but we're not going to be in lockdown forever. Even though we're not going to be in lockdown forever, Cynthia, like you were saying, with the supply chain of food, that is going to be an issue because for those of you who do not watch the news on a regular basis, meatpacking facilities are being very hard hit.
Yeah, they just closed the pork one yesterday, and that's 5% of all pork in the United States. And they just closed down one this morning that's in the beef industry. So we've got dairy farmers that are literally dumping millions of gallons of milk. What they don't seem to understand is that the demand hasn't gone away. It's just shifted channels. And because they're not nimble enough to figure out what channel to shift to, they're destroying the product, which means that we're going to have shortfalls. So there's a lot of things that are happening right now related to COVID that are not necessarily what you would immediately think of related to just the virus that affect it in all sorts of other ways. But so their call out on requests are very broad, and they even have like a catch-all. So they have their interest areas, and then they have a final interest area, which is if you have something that you've identified as important and we missed it, tell us. So it's a very interesting group, and they've gone DoD wide now. So the Department of Defense is all coming in to see what the Air Force is doing. So there's going to be a lot of funding over the next few weeks.
Yeah, because it is things like supply chain. It is things like being aware of where things are. Just
and for all of the computer geeks out there, there's a huge call within this for visualization and other types of things. So a lot of the people on COVID Coalition are applying for some of these as well.
So yeah, there's a lot where, you know, Cynthia's business of Seasonally Fresh, although it's with supply chain, the way that it was originally envisioned was pretty much for foodies and people who really have a deep interest in where their food is coming from. But she's been able to pivot that to being a little more general, a little more applicable, and then also have the secondary one of tracking medical supplies. For any of you guys, do you think that you have a business that could be, oh, you know what? Actually, before we do that, think about it, because I would love to know if you guys have businesses that you're wondering if you could pivot a little bit to be eligible for this, as well as useful in the COVID-19 response. We do have a question from Diana in chat. How do you find out about some of the general COVID funding?
Well, there's not really general COVID funding. There's specific COVID funding. So on the SBIRs, which are grants that are made for for-profit businesses. Most grants are for nonprofits. SBIRs are specifically for for-profit businesses, and they're aimed, again, largely at small businesses. The second one that I talked about, which is the CSO one, which is going to be rolling funding, is very unusual because it's for what they call non-traditional suppliers, which means that you can't have had a contract with the DoD within the last 12 months, which takes out all the big guys. All the Boeings and all those guys disappear on that funding. And there's also no cap on that one, which is also very unusual. The Directive Phase 2 has $1 million cap, that's a hard cap. And the Phase 1s are $50,000 cap. On the CSO, depending on what the solution is and what you need to do, there is no cap on it. And it's really based around what you need to figure out and how to put it together. As far as looking for generalized funding, I would suggest if you're going into one of the links that I gave you, which is the SAMS link, those are all the Department of Defense links related. And if you do a search in keyword for COVID-19, it'll pop up this stuff. The one page that I put onto the links that I took you to that had DARPA and Air Force and Navy, it's kind of the consolidation for all the COVID stuff. But there is also, if you do a search on the sbir.gov site, it'll show you any other stuff that's starting to pop up for other groups. Like FEMA just put one up yesterday, and it's not fleshed out yet. It's just basically they're putting it up and saying, we've got one coming, so pay attention to us as well. But there's 13 different organizations within the government that are required to do SBIRs, and they actually have their budgets tied to them. So for every budget that everybody gets in the federal government, a certain percentage of that has to be put aside every year for SBIR grants, and they're required to give that money out or they lose other funding. So there's a lot of money available. It's just a matter of learning how to navigate the stuff. So.
Along with that, I actually wouldn't be surprised if there are grants and contracts available with some of the big private companies that contract with the government, because they also have some requirements that they look for small businesses to partner with.
Well, there is a thing called a DoD Prime. So basically, if you want to work with the government and you're a small guy, a lot of the large corporations have a partnering system. So if you're in aerospace and you want to do something for NASA and you're a small company, you can partner with Boeing, and they will give you all their resources behind you to help you do what you wanted to do, and they will handle all the paperwork part of it with the Department of Defense. So the Prime system is actually very interesting. It's a little bit more complicated, but it's there.
And aerospace, of course, is one of the ones that's not likely to get hit quite as hard just because it's considered essential to national defense. Anybody else?
I know I covered a lot of territory, but
yeah,
you know,
what I'm seeing in the gallery view is an awfully lot of people very intently looking at their computer and typing, which is fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised, and Cynthia, I don't know if you've run across this, but either companies that are giving out innovation grants or private philanthropic funds that are doing grants specifically for this. I know a lot of them are giving directly to first responders.
Yeah,
but
most of the grants from the philanthropics are to nonprofits. So most of you won't qualify for those. There are some different innovation groups, and right now actually funding from VCs has not stopped. A lot of the angels have stopped because the stock market is not doing well. But the VCs already have funds set up with money in them. So they are actually bringing their investment level down to seed level to take over where a lot of the angels are not being able to invest. And some of those groups have funding specifically for things around COVID. Makes sense, it's going to be a lucrative area. But they are looking for people that are doing things in biotech or in visualization or actually manufacturers. So there's a lot of stuff along those areas as well.
So everybody, please give Cynthia a big round of applause.
Feel free to reach out to me if you need any other information on this stuff, and I'll put here, you can reach me. You can get me on LinkedIn or here.
And Cynthia, did you put your contact information in the box link that you gave us?
I'm not sure if it's on there or not, so
okay.
That's why I just stuck it into the chat. So that's my
FYI, copy paste, it is your friend. Additionally, one of the things that may also be your friend, and this is actually kind of a Zoom PSA, in the chat box, there is a little box with 3 little dots indicating more. If you click on that, you can actually save the, well, actually, Matt, can everybody save the chat, or is it just host?
Yeah, no, you can save the chat.
Yeah. And so all of that great information that comes out in the chat, you can save. And it saves it as honestly kind of an ugly text file, but still useful. So if you wanted to have it for future reference, please go ahead and save that. With that, officially, thank you for being here at 1 Million Cups again. I hope to see you all next week. We actually have kind of an interesting one coming up. It is called WeWorld, but it is from the creator of GlobeChat. For any of you who remember Kevin Strom, he has actually been around for about 5 years. I remember him presenting GlobeChat way back in the waybacks when we were at Eureka Building. So we're going to be able to hear about his new partnership and what's coming up out of that. And of course, it is always so wonderful to see all of your smiling faces. Thank you. Please go ahead and, oh, actually, can everybody give Matt a round of applause as well?
Thank you, Matt.
Matt Zimmer is the one who runs OC Engine, as well as providing us with a wonderful platform and the Zoom interface and acting as the producer and keeping me on track, which is always much appreciated. So with that, everybody, please go ahead. Feel free to hang out for the next 45 minutes or so, and we will see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And I'm not leaving.